Life ain't never been a pair of crystal stairs. On the night of November the 29th, 1933, at 2 a.m., four stick-up men lingered in a dark alley on T Street, across from a pool hall. They were waiting for their mark. Life in the Negro District of Washington, D.C. was one of poverty and despair even before the 1930s, but the Depression made things much worse. People had to depend on the government handouts, soup lines, and the kindness of others to eat, but others chose the life of crime to survive. You see, the streets always had hustlers and schemes and robbers and thieves, but the ones who had the most money during this time were the numbers men, and they were prize targets for armed robbers. George Hatch, born in 1899, known throughout Washington, D.C. criminal circles as a high-stakes gambler and top number runner, conducting his operations out of several business fronts throughout Northwest D.C. Hatch was often spotted with his right-hand man, John Walters, who was also a card player and a pool shark. John was enjoying a game of pool at a billiards place on T Street in Northwest. Being the master of his craft, he won several games back-to-back, and this is where he caught the eye and the attention of John Lay, a local rogue who observed Walters win several games. Believing that he had a large sum of cash, Arthur went back to his neighborhood and rounded up several of his friends, called Bucky Brodus, Melvin Struthers, and Milton Terry. Terry was a hard guy. He had just been released from federal prison on October the 31st, and by November the 29th, he was already agreeing to take part in the robbery. Terry was born in Washington, D.C. in 1909 to William and Susan Terry. Living with his dad, he attended school until 8th grade and ran away from home shortly after the age of 16. He was arrested several times in his youth and sent to Lorton's Reformatory. Released by the age of 18, Terry began to commit more crimes, and by the age of 19, he was arrested for assault with a dangerous weapon and housed at the D.C. jail. Arrested again 5 months later for 2 assaults and a robbery, Poop was sent to Leavenworth Federal Prison to serve a 5-year term. When he was released, he went to stay with his family in Southwest D.C. and linked back up with his old friends. Shortly before 10 p.m., 3 of those old friends knocked on his door. They needed Terry's help with something. Lay began to explain how John Walters was at the pool hall drinking, playing pool, and most likely winning everybody's money. Everything sounded right, so Terry, Lay, Brodus, and Smothers piled into an automobile and headed for T Street Northwest. They waited, and they waited, for Walters and Hatch to come out. Then at 2 a.m., George Hatch and John Walters finally exited the pool hall. The 4 men ran over to them, 2 grabbing Hatch while Brodus took Walters by gunpoint and began to search him. As George Hatch tried to free himself, a shot went off. The 4 men hopped into a getaway car and fled. Walters took Hatch to the emergency room where he was pronounced dead. The 4 men met at Milton's house to split up the winnings, $32 in cash. That's all they were able to take from Walters. The men were in disbelief. They thought for sure the robbery would net them at least a couple $1,000, and with one shot, the robbery was now a murder. Newspaper broadcast accounts of the slaying of the beloved numbers man. Before long, tips were pouring in, and the police were scouring the ghettos looking for the suspects. They arrested Carl Brodus and Melvin Struthers first, and under a grand jury inquest, Brodus admitted to taking the $32 from Walters and claiming that Milton Terry fired the shot that killed Hatch. It was also discovered that Lay was the mastermind who put the whole thing together. Police began to search for Arthur Lay and Milton Terry. Unable to find them in the district, they believed the men had left town. Detectives from Baltimore joined forces with the detectives from Washington, D.C. to begin tracking the men through black neighborhoods in West Baltimore. They began searching for the men around the areas of McCullough Street. The pair was finally captured in a house on Argyle Avenue, brought back to D.C. to face trial. An all-white jury rejected the charge of first-degree murder and convicted the men of second-degree murder. Arthur W. O. Lay and Curl Brodus were sentenced to 30 years. Milton Terry was able to escape the death penalty. He and Melvin Smothers received life sentences. Terry was sent to Lorton to serve his sentence, but was transferred to Alcatraz in 1935. There is where his old friend and rap buddy Arthur Lay would walk through the doors in 1938. They wouldn't get a chance to be together for long. By 1941, Terry was diagnosed with an unknown illness. He was sent to the Federal Medical Center for male inmates in Missouri. By 1943, he succumbed to his illness. Milton Terry lived a hard life, and he received a life sentence for a small price, $32, and a one-way ticket to Alcatraz. Like, subscribe, and share for more content.